internet friends, and welcome to episode number 162 of Final Boss TV. Today, of course, your WoW in-game rating show. Not all the time. If you haven't heard me talk about that the last couple of shows for 2018, there are some slight changes in different shows on the horizon that won't even be about World of Warcraft. But I mean, it happens, right? It's gonna happen. But today, this is one of 4 or one of 6 or maybe even one of 8 Ketchup shows. Again, we did these back in Warlords for a little while to sort of catch back up on what was changing in the game. But as always, my name is Adam K, aka Bay. I'll be your host for this adventure today. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, if you want to subscribe to the channel and check out all the past shows. Again, this is episode 162. So there's 161 of these and all the side content that's come up before this, if you'd like that. Or if you want to keep the show rolling, you can show your support by clicking the button up here. If you want to do the subscribe button on Twitch, of course, either one of those work. But of course, I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for... I just closed the tab accidentally. If it wasn't for all the support that the show has been getting on the Patreon page. And of course, shout out to the assistant producers, Terramaya, Chaos, Jason, Taislin, Screws Loose, Mia R4 Troffles, and Drewish. We have some Patreon announcements on the mid-show break that we'll go over in a moment when we get there. But if you want more podcasts, those are listed on our Patreon page. We have nearly an hour of the Rogue Ketchup BTS with the 3 of us from yesterday that gets a little spicy. We're not going to talk about the topic that came up in this, so you could just go, you can go check that out yourself. I'm just gonna not even listen to it if it comes up on the show today. But all the different BTS podcasts or the after shows from the previous ones, you can go check those out if you want more. It's like 130, there's like what, 130 something, 32 overall posts, all the show notes together. Go check those out if you'd like. But today is Rogues. So returning, and I know that I just said we're not gonna talk about it, but of course it happened right before the show started. So I'm just gonna like put the camera on Greyhound and just say welcome back and hope that he plays nice.
Oh, I mean, I'm the least toxic person in like every single Discord starting January 1st. I've been, it's been my resolution to curb down on toxicity, and then I published a very highly acclaimed scientific research paper that shows that some of the Discords are also less toxic than people expect them to be, so we're good. We're good.
This is what we talk about in the BTS podcast. But Greyhound, welcome back. Even though you're now, you're named as it is. Even though I think I gave you BitHound before, or your character's name before. I don't even know. Why are you on a rogue show?
I mean, you see, I find that like every 6 months I need to go on a new final boss show, but you don't use the same class often enough, so I just like, well, we did this. Now I need to find a new role. So like now I think you still haven't done Hunters yet. Oh yeah. I have a pretty good experience as Hunters. Okay. I might consider myself a Hunter IRL too. I have a good pet over here that's sleeping, little Haiti. So it's getting ready for the next show.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll see how that goes. I don't know. I think you're on a 6-month cooldown after this, but we'll depend on how today goes. Joining us, if we have fresh meat, we have Mystler piping in from the 1960s. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm great, and I have the best camera quality in this whole Discord conversation here.
I still think, even as pixely as your camera is, it's still better than Roger Brown's worst. So I'll take it, but I will take it. And you're not going to play piano for us on the show, are you? You're not going to, can you a little bit for us? No chopsticks?
Last time I checked the notes, we were talking about rogues, so we'll focus on that.
Damn. All right, fair enough. And then also joining Mystler is Koji, or Kojiyama. I'm just going to call him Koji the whole show. Your whole name is way too long. You really know.
That's totally fine.
That's totally fine. You might have, are your little rogues in real life going to poke in the show at some point? Maybe? No?
Nah, I banished them.
You banished them. But welcome to the show, sir. Hope you're ready to talk about rogues. Yes?
Absolutely.
Okie doke. Because we have, with how these shows work forward and everything, there is some interesting, there are all these new tools, I guess, that we'll be going over today on the show that sort of slowly propagate their way Like we had WoW Analyzer a while ago, and today I didn't know this existed. And if you want to just kind of bring that up with your intro, I'm gonna throw it right back over to Koji and then to Mystler, because you guys are the new ones here. Just who the heck are you? What do you do in the rogue communities? And introduce yourselves to the internets that don't know you outside of the Discord bubbles. Koji, go for it.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been involved in rogues for comparatively short time compared to these guys. Although I've been in the theory crafting community for extremely long time, going back to TBC and whatnot. But I'm probably most well known in the feral community for the work I was doing in HFC and in Warlords. And then beta happened. A lot of ferals ended up on different classes and ended up helping Pockets a lot with the Havoc Demon Hunter stuff and doing a lot of Simcraft work there until Tomb of Sargeras, where we ended up not having 3 rogues and decided to take one for the team and hop over. These guys have been great in terms of encouraging me to contribute, and Aethys and in particular has given me a lot of room to do some cool stuff. So, I am very grateful to them for letting me represent here.
Awesome. Yeah, I had to go through, I poked Fiery, which we can't have a rogue show without talking about Fiery. I poked him first, and he told me to poke Aethys, and Aethys was on for the rogue show earlier in the expansion. And then he told me to poke you guys. He gave me like a list. And then that's when I talked about this on the BTS show. Greyhound was like, well, yeah, I like to be
third ones.
Yeah, exactly. But that I have to go through the hierarchy, okay? There's like a family here that I have to to make sure it's all in a row. So, because then he also told me about Mystler, and sir, who the heck are you?
Who am I? Yeah. Well, I started theory crafting for the rogue class in early 2017, so I was highly motivated by Fire Demise and Aethys to put my skills to use, and I'm also, like Koji, very happy that I was welcomed so well, and since then I am part of the Simulation Craft developing team and maintain the rogue module, and together with Aethys we're working on everything related to rogues. We started that GitHub organization, and we're running the website herodamage.com with simulation results for not just rogues but every class in the game.
Yeah, I'll bounce right over to this real quick, and we have a little bit more of a segment that we'll talk about hero damage directly, but this is the new resource that I wanted to make sure gets put out there, that everyone realizes now that this is it's very simple, right? And I'm sure there are more bits and pieces you guys have in the works, but you can dive in, and as, of course, Battle for Azeroth rolls forward and all the modules get updated, this is a resource where you can go check out builds and target combinations for different types of sims with legendaries, sets, talent combinations for, I brought up the enhancement shaman ones just because that, and you can see sort of what the DPS of this is all for DPS, right? It's hero damage.
Exactly. We have simulations for combinations, like what set pieces can you use and what talents perform very well with that, and legendaries. And we also have charts that everyone loves for trinkets and relics.
Yeah,
that is what we currently have, and we do have a lot of more plans for Battle from Azeroth. There's a lot of interesting things that we'll have to look at and that we want to add to our website.
I like the variations. Mantle bracers with fan of knives, tier 21, 4-piece, tier 22-piece, all this stuff. It's actually, there's so many things. I'm just clicking on random parts right now, and it's just loading. So I wonder if it's just there's too much to look at sometimes on the data sheets.
The work part is probably the one we spent most time on yet.
Zero bias, by the way.
It's what?
The whole site started out as the Ravenhold TC site, so this was originally only rogue simulations, and we just expanded it to hero damage in early December, so this is kind of beta still.
Right. Now, there's a wild amount of stuff on here, and what did you say you have in the works? What do you guys? What else are you working on integrating into the website?
There's a lot of things we have in mind. We have maybe some of you have seen them before. We have like these 4-dimensional plots where you can see how different stat distributions perform. We want to show those at some point in the future. We also think about like cross-class comparison, relic charts for multiple classes, trinket charts, and the top builds for several classes in a way similar to the stacked simulations on the simulation craft side. And then there's, of course, Better for Azeroth. Azeroth armor will be a very interesting topic to investigate as soon as we get more information on that.
Yeah. Who else is involved in putting together hero damage? Because the big repository, just like the place that everything gets put together now, not every Discord has, or not every class has like a website, but obviously rogues have the very well curated Ravenholt. So who else out there needs to get shout outs for the work they're putting together for all the resources and tools that you guys are creating? And you can go with hero damage first and whatnot, since you were already going on that, Mystler.
Absolutely. Shout outs to Aethys, who got this whole project started and who's doing a wonderful job, like a project leader on this whole project, and his girlfriend Nia, who did a lot of the profiles for the other classes. So while I am someone who mostly works on the scripts behind the site and the rogue stuff, she did a lot of work on profiles for actually all of the classes, so that we can have simulations for those as well. And every now and then we also get contributions from other people. There's Cutie to mention, also a friend of Aethys, that helped with implementing some new techniques that we want to showcase pretty soon.
I'm scrolling over parts of the Ravenholt now, and I mean Shadowcraft is still well, I wanted to bring that up because that was sort of one of the original. That's kind of like, you know, remember RAR back in the day? That was Wrath into Cataclysm. We had the tool called RAR, but like, is Shadowcraft still something curated, or are you guys moving away from working on that and now everything is sort of just Simcraft, raid bots, and now of course
I think it's just raid bots and Simcraft, and
right.
It's only like 2 tools that are like maintained and updated, top of the line.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but this
I worked on RAR back in the day.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, simulations have kind of taken over in terms of, you know, representing the complexity and all the interactions that happen for rogue. So it's, you know, spreadsheets and stuff are still a useful tool, but it's kind of hard to model a lot of the complex interactions.
Yeah, especially Legion has made it pretty hard to work on that. I am doing my best to help with Shadowcraft as well, but it is there's still a few issues that I'd like to get ironed out, but it's not that easy. Like the Legion has been pretty hard on that.
Yeah,
especially now that you have raid bots, which is just kind of the same thing. Not as fast, like, as in Shadowcraft. You just click on a piece of gear and it instantly tells you like other things, but raid bots is more accurate. Pretty much the same exact.
Spreadsheets is you to have very quick results, but especially with raid bots, it's so easy to just use Simcraft in the cloud and sim your own char, and that is really something.
I mean, it's also really easy. You just donate on Patreon and you get the premium account, and you should do that. And then you get priority sims.
No,
yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, raid bots has definitely like reduced the barrier of entry to utilizing Simcraft for people who, you know, don't want to download the app or the application and run stuff and import profiles manually and stuff like that. You know, it can be a bit manual of a process to run it locally, but raid bots is super easy, and it's something pretty much anybody can hop on and mess around with. So, you know, it's almost easier than a spreadsheet, to be honest.
Yep. It will all. I've been talking to Serialos off and on in Discord about trying to build either a guide or a way to make a video or part of a show segment or something for him specifically to come on and talk about how raid bots has evolved and how the simulation craft backend of World of Warcraft has just slowly become what it is today, because there's no better time, tools and resource wise for a player of World of Warcraft than right now. Right, each expansion sort of pushes things forward, and between raid bots, the upgrades to Simcraft, and the modules and the guides and the documents and the tools that you guys are creating, and the other theory crafter and math crafters in the community, We've got, the WoW Analyzer tool now. The upgrades to Warcraft logs are ridiculous just because of the advanced combat logging integrations that Kira has put together. I mean, the replay function, that didn't exist before, and how better it's gotten. There's so many parts. And this is why this section, I would love to be able to tell you all these things that you can use, but this is definitely plugging all of these for the community. So take use of it. But you brought up one thing. I don't know who wants to tackle what this is, because rogues, I don't know how many other classes in the game have something like this that is sort of an open theory crafting module, forum, database, place to go. But you guys have this GitHub that, I don't know who wants to dive into this, if Koji or who wants to take this one.
Mystler is probably best.
Mystler, yeah, go for it.
All right, we have that rogue dashboard that we started also with a patch 7.5, when especially Subtlety was reworked on quite a large scale. And we opened this up to give everyone the option to contribute in a very simple way. You can create issues, you can send us in your suggestions. If you think the APL on SimCraft plays wrong, then send in your suggestions and we'll have a look at it. Also, we use this to get an overview of all the bugs, and Rogue is a class that has to deal with a lot of bugs. And yeah, we really wanted it to have a centralized hub where everyone can just put their suggestions and reports, and it makes it really transparent also for the community.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really cool resource. It's honestly how I got involved when I hopped over to Rogue, because I was poking around looking for resources and trying to get up to speed as quickly as I could, and I found this linked, and I was I was blown away at how organized it was in terms of having everything in one centralized place. It let me kind of absorb a lot of knowledge really quickly, and then I started contributing there. I think I opened 3 or 4 issues. Right. For minor things I found with assassination and whatnot when I was poking around on beta or PTR. And then, Aethys just kind of contacted me and PM'd me directly and said, feel free to contribute directly if you're going to be doing this regularly. So, I mean, it's a great thing. And they're really, it's something all the SimCraft developers on Rogue monitor this, and Aethys and Mystler and all these guys. So if somebody finds an issue and posts on here, it will get fixed. So and if it's a game bug, it will get reported to Blizzard. It will be a visible thing. So it's very, very good to use this if you want to get involved in the.
And that's why Poison Knives got nerfed.
Well, it didn't get nerfed. They need to fix it because obviously it's busted.
Well, no, the previous poison knife from a Vanish proc where you extend the duration of snapshotting.
Yeah, that was
had a brief nice moment where you could actually do damage with the snapshotting.
Yeah, that one was really what pushed it over the edge, finding that to kind of encourage a hotfix, because they had kind of let the poison knife thing go over the holidays, and then when we found the snapshot issue with Night Stalker, that kind of blew things open, because that was something like a 12% damage increase if you pulled it off just from doing one global correctly in your opener. So it was a little broken. And again, that got reported. I opened an issue for that after I found that and found a repro step for it, and Blizzard became aware of it very quickly. We don't like hiding stuff in the Rogue community. This is really strict about making sure we make everything visible.
Well, yeah. So I gotta shout Aethys out, because you guys can't see chat for the VOD purposes or watching live. Is that he commented, since we've done this, making this GitHub and this reporting place and this open forum for this, a lot of rogue bugs have been fixed because they were exposed publicly. And we have more that we'll talk about in a later segment, but the poison knife one, because you guys are aware of it, has been blue posted about, etc. Those moments, and I'm not sorry if you're a rogue that got temporarily banned because you used it on progression, because duh. Doing 5 billion DPS right now is obviously not intentional. Come on, don't be ridiculous.
I don't think anybody actually got banned. I know that one rogue who was doing it on Argus progression, he got forced DC'd.
Oh, really?
They, it was he got an email with a ban, and by the time he finished reading the email and he logged in, like the ban was gone. So it was just like log out of the game so we can like. Because I think like if you don't log out, like some of the hotfixes don't apply properly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this most recent one last week was, you know, far over the line in terms of being obviously really super broken.
I feel like, I don't know. I looked at some logs, like you only do like what, like 20 million damage, 10 million DPS for like execute duration. That's fine.
No big deal.
No big deal. You're just doing damage worth of like 4 people. It's fine.
I mean, it's like 4 people or like 1 Fury Warrior of his good procs. I mean,
oh yeah, no, it's not. Trying to sugarcoat the issue here. It's not a thing. But that has come out of, and you've found a plethora of things because of this open forum. So I wonder if this will sort of be adapted and moved forward. I know there are like small communities in the other spec discords where they have their little subsections that do this as well. But I almost wonder if being super open about it, that everyone can see, is a really better way to go about it, because this is just, it's just really, really out in the open there for everyone to see. I like it. That is nice. I like seeing all the different evolutions of what the communities are making. So
it also depends on like communities and how much they want to say make a bug well known, so people just go on and just like abuse it to the extent that it gets hotfixed publicly, or that it just like kind of stays dormant and like nobody really uses it until somebody like makes it public. Like one of the bigger cases early in the expansion was Proud Paladins, which no particular reason, but they had a bug with Permanent Seraphim, and I believe that bug was kind of like well known since like, well, it wasn't well known, that was the thing. It was known since literally like the first week of expansion, when everybody was just spamming dungeons, well, second, whatever, like when Mythic Plus opened up, when everybody was just spamming dungeons and people found it. But it was kind of like inconsistent, and it had, like if you died, it went away, so a lot of people didn't do it. And then I want to say it like 7, like in Nighthold, probably, it got like publicized really well, like somebody just like went and like did a raid clear with that bug. And like some people did YouTube, and it was just like everybody was exploiting for like a week or 2 in a row, and it just got fixed. So it's like, also get said in communities that if a community, I feel like, doesn't have like a really good direct link to Blizzard to report bugs, especially that like the ones that Blizzard would like pay attention and listen as soon as they're found, like, do you make a bug super public where everybody will be exploiting it for like a week or 2 before they can fix it? Or do you just like try to keep it hidden and just nobody uses it and everybody's happy? So, because I mean, with this, I guess like it's rogues now have, I guess, like a better line of communication. I don't know. They send like a pigeon mail, but outside of that, it's like.
I mean, I think it's personally worth publicizing just because you know, if it does become widespread, Blizzard will fix it. You know, like that, if that Paladin example, you know, if everybody knew about it in day 1 and started spamming it, just like the rogue issue last week, it gets fixed, you know, probably within hours. So I don't know. I mean, the other issue, or the other positive here is, you know, it's not just about bug reporting, it's also about APL or kind of rotational stuff. You know, the communities in WoW are very large, and not everybody feels, you know, comfortable directly contacting a theory crafter or know who's working on SimCraft or whatever. And it's really nice to have a centralized location where people can say, hey, you know, I noticed this thing, and if you do this thing before this thing, it's better, you know. So I mean, that happens a lot. And say, you know, we don't have a centralized location for this, like within the Havoc community, so people just DM me suggestions, but something like this would definitely make it have made it much easier to keep track.
I mean, actually, I don't know so much about Havoc, but I've noticed that like recently, like on SimC, every once in a while, between like my SimC isn't working because I downloaded it a year ago and now it doesn't support anything, and like I'm a healer but it doesn't seem to work for me. They do get like some reports of like, we can improve this APL by doing like those specific things, and like you can do some very specific things, but I feel like for now it's mostly just like people prefer to message directly rather than like find a way to actually implement an APL and just submit it as a fix. Because it's also easier for some people, like it's a lower barrier of entry if you can just say like, hey, theory crafter person, SimC person, I feel like if you do this it might be better, but I don't know how to put it like in an APL format.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah.
There is this brings up the rogue banter of bugs section, right? So I was gonna say, tell me about the ever-present state of rogue bugs specifically, because there have been beneficial ones, there have been detrimental ones, there have been ones, the more recent, where they have to disable a trait on your artifact weapon until they can fix it. So, and I was told to bring up how commonplace is this, and does it really keep happening? There's a short list where I have 7 options, or at least I could point at. So I don't know. I'm gonna go over to Koji. What's the rogue meta like with bugs?
I mean, it was interesting when I popped over to Rogue to kind of dive into all this stuff. And I think at the time the stealth extend bug was a thing in Tomb with Vanish and Sub, so that was kind of a thing I had to kind of learn how to use or whatever. But Rogue is just a very complex class. You've got a lot of stuff with many overlapping abilities in Vanish and in mid-fight stealth, and all these auras that apply temporary buffs, and also given the fact it's a very old class, and some of these spell IDs they're working with are like some of the first spells made in the entire game. I think bugs tend to sneak their way in kind of all over the place. There's a lot of little bugs and large bugs with rogues that kind of pop up in various places.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the big issues in terms of bug, is because like I would say most other classes kind of do get reworks every so often. Rogues haven't really even seen like a major rework up until this expansion, because like even in WoD, like you would gain some abilities compared to say like Burning Crusade, but not that many in reality. And even now, if like say looking back, like Assassination still has most of the buttons that it had back in like TBC or vanilla. I think it's TBC. So if you're like working with a class that just has all of the like, you have like an ability that you're like adding things on, and you do that for 10 years, it's obviously that like bugs are going to pop up. So like say Demon Hunters, they have like, they're also kind of prone to bugs right now, but I guess that's like a lot of due to like weird interactions and new class that doesn't have 10 years of experience. But rogues, they just have like abilities that don't really get like completely reworked or changed, but just get like slight tinkering over 10 years. So you have like one person did this, another person did this, and so on and so on. So it just has a tendency to just result in something. Plus, I feel like rogue community is one of the best in terms of like finding every single bug possible and just using it. And it's just like, it kind of like, I feel like rogue performance in raids, like kind of like to some extent even like correlates with bugs. That usually you have something propping up your damage in raid to make it better than before.
Yeah, I mean, often it's like kind of unintended interactions. It's not even necessarily anything fundamentally broken. I think a good example of that is the Subtlety, off GCD death from above thing, because that is just, if you don't do that, it's you're just not going to perform as sub. It's like a critical part of the rotation. It's become a like everybody has to learn how to use, your cooldown mid DFA to do more damage on the eviscerate when you land. And that was clearly unintended, like because it puts you on GCD, and you're playing this cool animation with you up in the air. And they kind of forgot that, we've got this off GCD ability that makes us do more damage. So you can use that midair to buff the eviscerate, the super buffed, already 50% extra damage buffed eviscerate, to do even more damage, and it multiplies on itself. So, that it's kind of an interesting thing, because it's probably not even really worth Blizzard trying to fix that, because they can just balance around it.
Sure.
So it just became part of the rotation. So it just kind of snuck its way in.
I'm gonna toss the rest of this over to Mystler real quick. How, when you're curating, and mostly going back to the GitHub, how do you sort through possible real bugs to ones that might be completely nonsensical? Or how do you recreate to figure this out yourselves? Like, do you actually just have a group of people that just sit around all day trying to break and fix parts of Rogue in game, and then figure out how legit or false these are?
Well, I think it's like an organic mix of all of that. Of course, especially on PTR or during beta for a new expansion, we do think about, hey, what could be wrong with that? Maybe there's some interaction they didn't think about, and you try to poke if there is a bug somewhere. But of course, also a lot comes from users just noticing that something is a little bit off, and then they ask on Discord in a spec channel also, hey, I saw this, and is this supposed to be that way? And then other people look at this, and it trickles all the way back to us then, and we can investigate this as a group.
Okay.
Also, 25%
Yeah, like
of the times
sorry.
it's somebody linking a log from China saying, why is China doing this? It doesn't make sense. And I know that happens in a bunch of communities, and you're like, why is China doing it?
I was just about to say that's the way that, you know, we found the Night Stalker, the snapshot bug that got fixed, you know, because somebody was talking about an assassination channel about openers, and they'd linked this log where they were using poison knife or ranged ability during the opener, and nobody in that channel really understood the significance of it, but they noticed he did really high damage. So I opened that log, I clicked, and I'm like, why is he doing this? And I go, I'm testing random things out on a dummy for like a minute, and I'm like, oh, this is really broken. So then we got people to, you know, repro it. Aethys and Mystler tried it, and so then we confirmed the repro steps that, yeah, you could get this snapshot, this 50% extra damage on deadly poison. It just stayed up the whole fight. So, you know, that just came from somebody linking some random, you know, Chinese log. So, you know, who knows?
I'm sort of on the outside of that in the enhancement community, because there are well-to-do, more involved enhancement shamans than I am, and they figure this stuff out. And I'll read it in our enhancement shaman little corner that they post all these huge lists of combat log, like moment to moment, second to second things, and all of a sudden like, oh, this doesn't line up with, and that doesn't, and this didn't proc, but it should have, because it's right here in the log, but nothing happened. So I just read it and I'm like, okay, I have no, you know, I didn't find any of this stuff. And I find a lot of things during beta, and I'll be doing all my beta testing again with Battle for Azeroth like I did. But a lot of it, I think, is things that just don't physically work. Or when I reported, you know, my quickening nonsense for mages back in Legion beta, where I was like, I am a complete scrub and I can break this spell, so let's not let this go live. And of course it does. So it's funny to see to who finds what and where they come from, and finding one from the other side of the world that then immediately gets brought up with you guys. And they reacted fast to that one. There are other ones on here that I'd never even heard of before. But have there been any that have been abused to the point where, has anyone actually, the banning joke earlier was just a nod, but has anything been that bad yet in Legion? Or just because these are,
we did have
any of the rogue ones were bad.
We did have a lot of rotation changing bugs as well. Especially the one I could mention is the extended stealth bug we had in early 7.5, I think, where you deliberately did not enter stealth before combat and started by using Shadow Dance. And in Shadow Dance, you could use stealth, and stealth was protected for the whole rest duration of Shadow Dance. So you had the Mantle Legendary, which gives you a 100% crit window after stealth expires. You had that up for the whole duration of Shadow Dance, and after that, stealth broke, and only then the crit window started to tick down. So you got essentially 5 more seconds of 100% crit.
So,
I mean, but to answer your question, I don't think too many of the bugs have been what I, you know, ban-worthy type major ones. I think this one last week was probably the closest one, just because of how extreme it was. And I presume that if Blizzard hadn't hotfixed it like that day, that if people had continued using it during the week on Argus progression or whatever, they probably would have got banned, because it's well, yeah, we don't want to talk about that. but that was definitely a case where, like, when you're doing literally twice, maybe even 3 times as much damage as you should, you know, that was probably getting into the territory where if it was on Mythic progression, you probably would have got banned.
I've had my fair share, and I've played Havoc as my main alt, and I've had the fair share of interesting interactions with enhancement going into Legion so far. But I've never had anything that was this consistent that you all have. And it goes back to what Koji said about how a lot of these spells have been in the game for, you know, a decade, where you just sort of every patch or every minor patch or every small change to the game that the rogue community just sort of accepts that, oh, this is really spaghetti, but we can use it, so do this in the rotation instead of this. That's just sort of how you guys play now.
Build your own hotfix.
That's what it sounds like. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, Havoc hasn't had anything near, like, I think the only thing that I can think of on Havoc that's been anything like any of these was like the mastery snapshotting thing with Chaos Blades in you know, Trial of Valor.
Dinner Bell.
Yeah, Dinner Bell or
Dinner
that.
Bell gear swapping before pull, stuff like that, which, you know, they fixed the next major patch, but it did change the rotation. But yeah, rogues get that kind of stuff all the time. That's not just a one-off for rogues.
I mean, there's also a lot of like kind of bugs for other classes. Again, I think like for mage, like there was like some like ice lands, let's go into melee to like do double damage instead of a GCD thing where every single melee hated them because they still get targeted by range mechanics while sitting on top of melee, and you're like, you are ape, go away from me, kind of thing. And there's like I know there's like a bunch of spaghetti code for other classes. Just like for rogues, we kind of get lucky that most of the bugs are beneficial. I think like I was reading recently for like in Hunter Discord how it's like, hey, if you apply glyphs that changes your pet appearance or something, you lose damage. And I'm like, this is exciting. This is the quality. Yeah. This is what we want to hear.
Yeah. No, I remember that one. That was a strange one. I mean, we had that. That was a thing for enhancement early in the expansion. If we glyphed raptors, I can't remember if it was more or less damage. They wouldn't, it was less. They wouldn't gain the alpha wolf elemental change. They'd be just flat raptors.
Well, yeah, they're raptors. They're not
raptors, not wolves. I know, but come on. So I get those. And that just sort of happens. But it just seems weird that rogues just sort of adapt and just utilize these that keep happening. Which I wonder with the downsizing of the game in battle if those will continue to follow you through. But that brings me to another bit of a banter discussion topic that you wanted to bring up in the Discord. We were setting things up before about melee versus ranged, and not just in Taurus, the Burning Throne, but sort of all throughout Legion. So sort of an open forum, and I want to see what chat has to say. And if you're in the YouTube comments right now, please, what is your thoughts on Legion's melee versus ranged debacle or discussion or situation? Because I don't think it's been very bad per se, but has it really been that bad or awkward this expansion? And Greyhound, I know you wanted to rant, so
yeah. I mean, I'm a bit biased again, like I said. So like when I say ranged, I don't like immediately assume like a fire mage. Well, I don't know who hardcasts the most, like a elemental, I guess, if they don't have cooldowns, where you just have to stand and just like throw your like spaghetti and meatballs at people and hope that they hit. But like I know that like I've been raiding as a melee DPS and occasionally tank and everything since Burning Crusade, and I just got like so used to like mindset of handling mechanics. And then Legion was probably like one of the, I don't know the last time I played ranged DPS, probably like in Mogushan. And then like Legion playing like a hunter, it's just like almost like infinite mobility class. You're just like standing there, jumping into melee range, out of melee range, standing 30 yards away, running into melee because why not? Moving buffs your damage. It feels like it's a lot of mechanics that are very like untuned, even between range. Like I feel like closest comparison was to me would be like back in Siege when you had some range which were pretty mobile, and then you had like warlocks who just had like Kill Jaden's like walking slower thing, where you just run around and still cast but on a move. So I feel like right now, like it's on Taurus is probably the most melee unfriendly one in terms of like, hey, there's Coven. If you're melee, I hope you're ready to like go play a range ult, ideally a multi-dot like a warlock class.
I went elemental. I've gone elemental for 3 of our kills.
Yeah, I mean like it's like also like a bit of to do with class tuning when like, hey, warlocks are probably best class in every single fight this tier, outside of maybe Mythic Argus because you don't have immunities, but we'll just wait until there's a group with like 20 warlocks killing Argus anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a whole, Antorus hasn't been too bad for melee. I think it's more that the outliers on the fights that are bad for melee are really bad for melee, and the ones that are bad for range are just like kind of a little bit annoying for range. So I think the juxtaposition there is bad, because I mean, when you have a situation where Coven, where like warlocks are a good example of a class that can do probably double the damage of most random melee.
Yep.
And then you go on the next fight, and Agrimar is kind of annoying for range. They have a lot more mechanics to deal with, but they don't suffer nearly as much as melee just get wrecked on Coven. So it's mechanically, just fundamentally, it's easier to make a fight accidentally that is really bad for melee than it's easier to accidentally make a fight that's really bad for ranged.
Yeah, because
it just, a lot of the range classes, the mobility issue is not really a major issue. So short of like giving just range tons of extra mechanics to deal with,
this is
which is what that was their approach in Tomb of Sargeras, right? Let's make the fights easy by making make the dungeon melee friendly by making it so melee didn't have to do any mechanics whatsoever and just stand there and tunnel the boss.
Kind of, yeah.
I feel like the biggest issue is that like range have like very limited set of like issues. That like one, from what I remember previous raid mechanics, is you have to be like in regarding to positioning of the boss. Like some of the ads, like, hey, I have a shield that like I'm not taking any hits from the front. So then range, like if they're really out of positions, they're gonna have to like run around and cast and everything. 2 is just continuous DPS on a go. Like if you're like Garrulon, when you needed to stand underneath the legs to like gain extra damage and be able to cleave better, or even like some other fights. But it's like range like weaknesses don't really get exploited that badly. And again, like for some melee, again, like I would say the Tomb was like also kind of different for melee. Like if you're like say a warrior and you're just standing on a boss and you're like smashing, boss dies, you collect loot, it's okay. It's a different thing when you're like Tomb and you're rogue and you're like stab, run away, soak, come back, stab, run away, soak, come back. Because it's like looking at even Tomb, which was a melee friendly part of the expansion, you have KJ. Whereas the melee, like some melee get to stand under the boss and do whatever they want. As a rogue, you're still expected to always be like running away, probably somewhere into range to get the soaks, get the soaks, kite the ball in the last phase. Say like last phase of KJ, you get the beams, you're still losing a bunch of just uptime on a boss because you're going to be going to safe spots. You get Avatar where you have to like zoom around the room, trying to DPS Maiden, coming back to get your soaks, staying spread out. I don't know. I mean, like, Maiden was kind of like a joke of a fight, so it wasn't that say complex or like challenging, but I would still say that like getting melee orb soaks was harder than getting range ones was already like just pre-filtered for you. Like as a range, you just stand there and like, oh, there's an orb hitting me. That's cool. As a melee, you still need to weave in and out. So it's like, especially bigger issue, I feel like, in terms of range versus melee tuning, is melee always has that issue that if you bring too many melees, anytime that there's like a spread mechanic, you just like want to die IRL and just like not do this fight. It's like, hey, there's chain lightning on Coven. That's a great concept. I love that. And then you have 5 melee hitting one boss instead of a small safe spot. And you're like, let's do dancing.
I bring this up, and it's not just trying to just, mine the salt exactly, but I always bring this up sort of on a rogue perspective due to the fact that rogues have always been seen as these classes that can cheese, soak, ignore all these mechanics, right? Or they're used to great length, say like Mythic Blackhand last expansion, where you can completely ignore part of how a fight works with Blackhand Smash mechanic with like 3 rogues and Feint, a built-in baseline mechanic. Right? They just won't die. So
yeah, rogues are often the exception to the melee rule. Like and much to the chagrin of many other melee specs, if you've got a situation like Avatar where you say only want to bring 5 or 6 melee, and you have to bring 3 rogues to solo soak or DK or somebody, like all those other, that leaves 1 or 2 melee spots for every other spec combined to join in. Same for KJ.
Yeah, no, I bring it up because of that. That's a good point. It's like almost this weird unfairness with how many melee you can physically bring to an encounter. But then if an encounter calls for these harder to handle mechanics that are then easy for a rogue, you just bring rogues. And then you can't bring any other melee. So like there's this huge divide with encounter design and then what you want to play and what you have fun playing. That, I mean, even Word Up, right? Like the Enhanced Shaman Senpai, he's played a lot of rogue because you just have to play rogues. And
well,
I don't know.
Also helps if you can survive mechanics.
Well, sure, of course.
Shaman's defensives are pretty good, except they're 30-minute long.
Well, a 30-minute long immunity. Yeah, I know, it's pretty good. But I don't know why this keeps happening. I brought this up at BlizzCon, and where I interviewed Ian, straight up, about are they going to be addressing defensives and utility kits in Battle for Azeroth? And the reply was, not quoted, you can go back and check that on YouTube, that they'd rather cut back on those that have too many than add some to those that have too few. So first off, I was like, okay, rogues have 5, so I guess they're losing something.
Crimson Vial, goodbye.
Oh.
Hey, Crimson Vial's OP.
I mean, I'll keep my feint. That's like a secured right spot right there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, rogue, like you say, rogues probably do have 5. You know, they've got Cheat Death, Feint, Crimson Vial.
Cheat Death is a talent.
Cloak of Shadows.
Vanish and Cloak of Shadows.
And Vanish, Evasion.
6. Don't give the. I mean, Vanish is usually used as a DPS.
Yeah, we got to use that for DPS nowadays.
Correct.
So
I'll give that to rogues.
Count.
But that still means that you have 5. You know how many I have? I have 1 point-ish.
Ankh is a very strong cooldown, as was mentioned at BlizzCon.
I laughed so hard when that was brought up. I just laughed. I laughed. Oh.
And I mean, I feel like the whole like utility aspect is it's not a very big issue in terms of class tuning. Because, like you said, like if you have like on one hand you have rogues that have like I can survive any single AOE damage and saying with Feint, I can survive most of raid damage with Cloak. Maybe I don't know. Like honestly, I don't remember last time like that evasion was that useful in raids for like as a melee DPS. Because if things are hitting you, that you're evading them. Either there's a fixate mechanic or something is going terribly, terribly, terribly wrong, and you're gonna die anyway pretty soon.
For those 1% heroics.
Yeah, but it's a bit hard to sort of like justify bringing other classes.
Yep.
If rogues do comparable damage, like if you have like shamans and rogues doing the same amount of damage, you can either bring a shaman who's going to go splat if like boss sneezes at him twice, or you can bring a rogue who's just going to be like, I'm going to feint this, I'm going to cloak this, I'm going to cheat this, I'm going to vanish before this thing targets me. And then I'm gonna feint and cheat and cloak again. Well,
Gray, you're hurting his feelings. You can see the pain in his eyes.
And I mean, like, but the thing is, it can be applied to a lot of like classes. You can apply that to shamans. You can apply it to pretty much most classes. So, and to lesser extent, it happens to range because you have like you can bring a hunter that's gonna sneeze if you get targeted more than every 3 minutes when your turtle is down, or you can have a warlock who's like standing on Kingaros, like, yeah, I know that there's fire around me, but I'm just gonna drain soul this ad and do like more HPS than healers. And I'm just like,
drain soul will not be in that incantation. I can imagine in the next expansion. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah,
kind of like I feel like a bigger issue is that like people aren't addressing, especially like on sort of like lower tiers of progression. No offense to anyone, but if you're like rating LFR, you might not exactly care like how much mechanics your class can survive. But if you like. Not even say like at our level, but like looking at some of the like top 2 world level, because there's like really no top 3 world level consistently. You have to care a lot about like survival of classes. Like, can a class survive mechanics? Like, say like on Argus, like I've imagined like a lot of people would actually like really like to bring like 2 enhancement shamans because they do pretty good DPS. They're strong. They're actually good class, except you get to last phase. And you're not going to be able to survive it. Even the first phase is like very sketchy for shamans.
Well, I've got you there, because in the last phase of Argus, you can't die if you're already dead.
Well, that's why I said you bring 2 shamans, because you're not going to have 2 ghosty boys running around collecting Orbeez.
I mean, come on now.
And you just get Demon Hunter with Mastery set, and they just can also even jump over those little things.
Yeah, they can jump as a wisp. Okay, that's wicked OP, but yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, this type of thing is hard. I can understand it's hard to balance from a game design perspective, because you're sitting down for an expansion and thinking, oh, what cool things can we add to this class? Oh, that sounds neat. Let's add that in. And you don't find out that it's supremely broken until your second raid tier or something.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Retroactively go back and completely change everything? So it's tricky. Like, I'm sure on paper, oh, warlocks getting absorb shields when they do damage. No problem. That sounds awesome. That's going to be like a minor thing to increase their soloing ability when they're doing world quests. Oh, wait, it makes them invincible to everything. Oh, no.
Didn't break like Iron Maiden. That never happened before. Warlocks getting absorbs and being used instead of another tank. That's a new.
Mystler, I want you to wrap this up for us about the range versus melee back and forth here. What are your thoughts on this and the state of rogue cheese, I suppose? Just play rogue.
Actually, at the moment, yeah, but yeah, everything was set so far. I think rogue has a lot of utility that is kind of imperative for a few bosses to bring along to play them, especially in progress. And I'm kind of curious how they will address this in BFA. Feint is, for example, an issue because you can just spam it. Maybe they work on that. I don't really know what they're gonna do, but the issue certainly exists.
I mean, actually, I do hope that they do, and they just go and cut extra cooldowns, and feel like it will like actually make raid tuning a lot easier when you don't have to like design mechanics with Divine Shield, Ice Block, Cloak, Turtle, everything in mind. We've seen that on Battle Matches where it's like, hey, hunters and rogues can cheese that mechanic. Hey, hotfix next week because we forgot about those mechanics. So removing immunities and just giving like defensives on cooldown will just make raid mechanics way easier to tune.
Yeah, and of course there's Kib chiming in chat. Fate will have a 4-second cooldown in BFA. Definitely fixed.
I mean, honestly, putting a mid cooldown on Feint wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. I think Aethys has floated that one before.
But how will I dump my extra focus? I mean, energy.
Wow, don't call it. Oh, don't call it that. That's risky.
He's been playing Hunter too much.
Yeah. Ugh. Anything else on the first half of the show before I move us on? Because I wanted to get into a little bit of guidey stuff, and then we got to poke the bear a little bit, I think. Anyone else got anything from the first half? Are we good? Yeah, exactly that. Good, gentlemen? All right. So I need to plug a few things, and I said earlier in the beginning of the show that there are some announcement-y bits, especially those that are on Patreon supporting the show. First off, of course, if you want more of the show and more of me talking to nerds, there are 32, I can't do math, 32 additional podcasts. Of course, the further back you go, even though I would go back, there is 2 hours of Preacher and myself talking about the state of Legion for that show prep. That one has some juicy bits in it. And we talk about the whole not going to mention it on the show during this BTS podcast with the my guests that are currently on for this Ketchup one. This is a meet and greet podcast. These are happening either before or after. You can go check those out. You can also follow along on the show notes and see how they're all put together if you like to do that. But this right here, so there are different tiers on Patreon, and I wanted to make sure I bring this up right here, that the legendary or above tiers, there's going to be our first sort of private, you have to be at the tier above live stream on the platform on Patreon this Saturday at noon Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT. So noon Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT this Saturday to gather feedback, and you guys can give me direct back and forth via the chat. It'll only be a stream for you guys that are on Patreon on that tier or above. And you can give me any feedback, any questions you have. That's happening this Saturday. These will be about once a month, if not bi-monthly. Once a month is fine if we have enough people that are interested in how these go. This is the first one we're doing it test bed wise. And then the Azurite tier and above patrons, I need your birthdays, because if you want that reward, then I need the birthdays. So there's a post. Go check that and fill that out if you would like. If it's, I'll send you like a weird like Merry Christmas, Great Aunt Mirtha card. They'll be ridiculously weird. That's the whole point. But those are there. So check that out if you would like. And again, if you're on YouTube right now, you can check out all the past shows. They're all organized by years. So if you have any shows from last year or 2016, they're all just chunked, playlisted by years. So you can subscribe to the YouTube channel and check those out. And they're also on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music, audio only. And if you want to hit me up in either on Twitter or in Discord for the RSS feed, if you want to hook that in, that works too. If you want to listen to the show itself. But if you want to support the show, and I've done more digging into this, of course, as I plugged this last week, part in sponsored by the affiliate, whatever you want to call it, hashtag sellout moment, Daily Harvest. If you want to support the show in a more physical, literal way, you can eat this stuff and support the show. But there are breakfast bowls, parfaits, smoothies, soups, a whole bunch of really good stuff on Daily Harvest. And you can use the code FinalBossTV to get 3 of your first order of 6 cups or more free. If you want to do that, you can set that up. Link down below, and of course in the YouTube description box down there. I've been partaking in Daily Harvest for the better part of a year. It's real good. I'm not even trying to like upsell you. It's just really good. So there's that. So thank you to all those that are checking it out, and tweet me or hit me up in Discord and tell me how it is when you do get your first box of stuff. But let me bring this over here, bring the talent calculator over. I haven't looked at one of these in a long time because it is time to, and of course first half of the show, we talk about all the resources you guys have, right? So go to Ravenholt for these things. Go check the Discord. Do you guys have an FAQ tab in Ravenholt Discord, or do you have like a pin section?
Yeah, there's an FAQ channel.
Okay, because we're not going to go over all this in super detail. If you want more about relics and legendaries and all this other madness, then go check that out. But I wanted to go over a quick overview of like the cookie cutter specs that are running around right now. Do each one of you want to take one of each of these, or does someone want to just run through these all with me here? What do you want to do?
Not Outlaw.
Not
Outlaw.
So who's taking Outlaw? Want to do Outlaw first?
Mystler didn't say. We got him.
Oh, okay. Mystler, you want to run us through like what's Outlaw running right now?
Well, all right. Let's talk about Outlaw.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Outlaw is not...
Outlaw specs are slightly contentious because there's a little bit of a holy war between the slice and dice and non-slice and dice crowd.
Oh, is there still really?
It has really gotten worse with the latest patch, because slice and dice is pretty much viable right now, and it wasn't before. So yeah, there's those two builds. Do you have the talent calculator open right now?
Yeah, I pulled it up. I have the WoW DB ready to go. I'm just curious to see, like, because we talk about this at the beginning of the expansion, like what talent hierarchy we're seeing here. And this is the basis for all the classes. And again, if you, barring legendaries, relics, NLC madness, that's all written in guides. But I want to see like what talents have come to the forefront this late in the expansion where people are running. So yeah, embrace the pirate. So what are pirates speccing nowadays? Like what's the hierarchy like?
Well, it's probably best to start with the level 100 tier, because this is really what decides how the gameplay will look like. Basically, Outlaws have their Roll the Bones spell, which will give you random buffs, and you can opt out of that mechanic by using the Slice and Dice talent, and this will just give you a flat attack speed and energy regeneration increase based on your combo points for a certain duration. And based on that tier, you will also adjust the other talents, also just to a very small degree. Most talents are somewhat set in stone in the current meta. So the tier that is most affected is currently the level 15 tier, because Slice and Dice rogues play with Ghostly Strikes in single target, and otherwise people usually play with Quick Draw, which is a passive, and Ghostly Strike is another active ability that you use to support your rotation.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, the rest of the Outlaw talent tree really doesn't matter that much, because it's got a lot of support stuff, you know, and kind of tiers where there's one very, very standout option, like the Alacrity on the 90 tier. Just the Cannonball Barrage and Killing Spree just don't compete with it at all. So
How many times Alacrity pushed you through the world and killed you? Huh? Never.
and then you got the 30
66.
tier, which is mostly mobility and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of there aren't that many choices to make with Outlaw talents other than, you know, are you going to play Slice and Dice or not?
What is so Ghostly Strike pairs with Slice and Dice? What and Quick Draw pairs with what then? Is it Marked for Death or Death from Above?
They are both
Marked for Death.
viable, but Marked for Death is the one that people usually play on single target fights, especially.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you usually use Quick Draw because, I mean, the non-Slice and Dice build usually runs green skins bracers for that build.
The Slice and
Okay.
Dice build depends a lot on auto attack damage, so you'll also take everything that buffs your auto attack damage there. You'll use the Convergence of Fates if you have one. You will use the ring from Court of Stars, I think, that will buff your auto attack damage. And the Pantheon Empowerment procs also scale really well with Outlaw.
Night Blooming Frond, if you can get a high
Oh
level.
yeah, still really wow.
Yeah, no, it's very like Night Blooming Frond does like 7% of my damage with a 910, 915 Frond.
What's the energy tier look like for the Slice and Dice build then? 45 tier.
Deepest Stratagem is also very set in stone at the moment
Still, right? Yeah.
You didn't really need Vigor because Outlaw is partially overflowing with energy, so no need to skill that.
Okay. That looks... It's funny. I don't know if I remember this exactly because it's been over a year, but I know how Deeper Stratagem started off being like, bleh! And now it's funny here, like it's locked in, which I like seeing how that sort of evolves over an expansion, but funny because I thought it was a lot of fun just playing it back in the beta. I liked that feel, but that makes sense. I mean, obviously, Deeper Stratagem Slice and Dice lasts for 42 seconds. That's a long time for uptime wise.
Pandemic lad. So I think it goes to like 58 seconds.
58, yeah.
Oh wow!
If you refresh during Pandemic, which you want to do when you're running the buff,
right? Yeah, but Metwood stack obviously that's why you say Alacrity as well, and yeah,
because loaded dice will buff your Slice and Dice as well if you're not running Roll the Bone. So when you refresh Slice and Dice there, you want to do it Pandemic and get like the super long buffed Slice and Dice.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
The level 90 tier is a bit unfortunate, I think, because Alacrity is set in stone, but it is, I think it's pretty boring. It's just stacking up haste for you and performs so well and completely outperforms the other two talents, Cannonball Barrage and Killing Spree, which are very cool in my opinion. But just no reason to play them.
It is really one of the few. It's one of the few times I think where they've made a complete passive that competes so well against like two very active abilities. Like usually it's the other way around where the super passive option is usually the lesser tuned option.
Lemon Zest? Or
yeah.
Them, whatever it is.
I've been running AS Ancestral Swiftness, which is the passive haste gain, almost the entire expansion. So, I mean, it happens there too. I almost wonder if they need to be really more a lot smarter with talent design in battle, that they really shouldn't be putting passives in active tiers. A tier should have 3 actives or 3 passives, because that determines a lot more easy either numerical play, which can be tuned, or just actual gameplay. So
I think Blizzard stated their intent on having 1 passive in every row, I think. Because they really want to make these optional, that if you want to play like the easy way, you can just go all passive and choose actives if you want more opt-in complexity.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something. Sorry, good.
I feel like in some cases, like having a passive can actually lead to more complete game styles than having an active, and vice versa. I mean, it really depends a lot on tuning. And I feel like also like you can say have something like, another example being say Guardian Druids. Like you can have Galactic Guardian, which is a passive, you get a proc, you do damage, versus an active Incarnation, and say like, I think like, and before like at least this week, once they like did some things with tanks, because everybody cares about tank DPS so much, but passive option was doing more damage. But then if you look to the real fights, like you could see that like, yeah, you might be doing more damage overall, like on a single target 6-minute long fight with like Galactic Guardian, but then you get fights where like say you get to do KJ ads and you can head Incarn and just like trash, and
That's
do big
true.
damage there. You can get fights like Kingaros, where you might want to sacrifice overall damage for a bit more burst in a specific point of the fight, and so on. So I feel like you can have, even arguably say, like weaker active talents if it's like, say, like you can lose 100k, well, you can lose 10k DPS, but double your burst. I feel like that would be something that, like, you can look at the fight, like if I have ads that I need to kill, I'll do the trade, because you can even see that in legendaries to some extent. Like, even like, say, looking at sub before, there was a not as competitive but fairly fun build. It didn't use deep shadows, it didn't use shoulders. You just had, like, if you look at sims, your damage just like goes up a bit and then it just flatlines for 5 minutes, because you just stay at the same exact damage. It's always the same, and it just like, it was very fun build to play, but your damage, like, you didn't see any spikes. And because of that, anytime there's like, I was trying it on Avatar, and it's like, yeah, you get a Maiden Shield, you probably want to pop cooldowns there. And it's like, too bad, your damage actually doesn't change whatsoever. So you might, even if, like, I think at that point for me it was actually simming a bit higher, I had to go and play a lower DPS build because it gives me more burst, it gives me more, like, better for conditions that you're doing. So I feel like that's also like another thing to account for when, like, looking at passive or active talents.
Yeah, and I also don't think passive talents don't have to be boring.
Demon Hunter.
There are examples of passive talents that have pretty reasonable gameplay implications if they're made in a way that creates an interaction between two abilities or something like that. You know, it doesn't. But Alacrity is not one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just designed to just stack up in the background and have absolutely zero interaction whatsoever. So at that point, it's more of a design decision between, like, interactive versus non-interactive rather than active and passive.
So if Mystler got combat for us, who wants sub?
Ooh, combat.
I'll do
bringing
sub.
combat back.
Sub is fun.
Yeah, gotta call it combat. Sub, you wanna walk through what are sub rogues looking like then right now, Greyhound? What's like a build path that most people are playing?
I mean, it's also like, I feel like for sub rogues it also depends between Mythic Plus and raids.
Of course.
But even that, it's a bit. Let me actually pull it up.
So it's all Gloomblade. I know that's right there. I'm gonna lock that in.
I mean, for a while for this patch, I think even for some people it actually sims the highest, and you're just like, see, this is one of those cases when you see, like, hey, this sims like 2k higher, I'm just not gonna play that anyway, and just like, it's boring and it's not fun.
Well, 2k over doing 2 million, like, what is that?
Yeah.
Gloomblade was like, I think, Mystler, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that kind of pulls ahead if you're running like the 2-piece, 4-piece build, I think.
Gloomblade runs ahead if you play with the Insignia Legendary, with the ring.
Yeah, that too, yeah.
That really makes Gloomblade perform well, and is a reason why I actually play Gloomblade in a raid at the moment, because I got very high Titan Forged leggings, and these make the cookie cutter build for me not as good as the ring build, and that's why I play Gloomblade. But otherwise, yeah, Gloomblade.
So I feel like the biggest difference is, well, the most important talent I would say is tier 90, because you have Dark Shadows and Alacrity, which does nothing for you effectively. Like I said before, like, me and Aegis talked about enveloping Shadows build right after the 7.2 rework, because it was like a bit different. That was like the smoothest butter, does nothing damage build, but it just like it's not competitive because of that. So tier 90, you're pretty much always running Dark Shadows. I can't think of any situation right now where you wouldn't. Tier 100, you're almost always running Death from Above. It's good in raids because, again, you can do the, like, super big snapshotty on eviscerates to get those like 10-15 mil crits, and then, like, a lot of classes complain, how is it balanced? And it has a very nice benefit at Mythic Plus if you're running the shoulder cape builds, that you can just do insane bursts. Like, I probably like highest like bursts within like 2 GCDs, where you just like press 1 button, 2 button, and everything dies, or you do like a lot of damage to each target, because it does have a nice AoE component around it.
Yep.
Which I don't think it's not that strong in raids, but in Mythic Plus, when you get to pull like 20 mobs together and AoEs them, it's insane. 75 talent, it's all utility, so it doesn't exactly matter. Tier 60, I feel like you always run Cheat Death. I think the only fight where I didn't run Shoot Das that I can remember was I ran Elusiveness on Tekanjis and Nighthold because you could just soak the whatever thing comes out of his poop, like his farts, whatever that do damage to you and stack.
Yeah,
Because it just helped reduce AoE. Tier 45, I believe it's always you stratagem. I think like you guys were recently talking about doing something with anticipation. Well, at some points people ran anticipation because there was a bug, once again, with their artifact ability, that if you used the finisher when you had 10 combo points, the buff, well, I think it was 8 at that point, the buff for the next finisher from like Finality would be higher. Again, like a small box.
It's all right in AoE right now because you can overflow combo points a little easier, and you try to use max combo points in AoE rotation, so it can kind of have some.
It also depends on like number of targets, like if you're trying to kill one priority target, or if you're trying to like there's a lot of things. But I would say like generally you run Deeper Stratagem. Tier 30 you run Night Stalker. It's especially nice for exactly that burst when you in AoE when you can do the Vanish Cloak inside of Shadow Dance. And tier 15 you run Weapon Master since it got fixed, unless again for some reason Master of Subtlety might seem higher for you. I don't remember exactly when, but Weapon Master I feel like is generally better in AoE. Gloomblade, again, if you have really bad or really good luck with the rest of your gear, it might seem highest for you. I don't think a lot of people like that build exactly. So most people that I know just run something even if it drops their damage a bit. But generally I would say it's like if you get looking for like the most cookie cutter best for most number of people, it's going to be Weapon Master, Night Stalker, Deep, Dark Shadows, DFA.
Yeah, Weapon Master scales really well with AoE with multiple targets. Single target people usually prefer Master of Subtlety. It's also much more consistent, but with more targets, definitely Weapon Master.
And chat's bringing up Shadow Focus with tier 21 now. Is that a thing? Or
Shadow Focus is interesting. Yes, tier 20 set bonus used to give us energy over time, and with that being gone, as people swap over to the tier 21 set bonus, Shadow Focus is actually an interesting choice. It reduces your energy cost in stealth, and thus kind of offsets that loss of the set bonus. And if you run with the new set, Shadow Focus might be something you may want to look at as an alternative to Night Stalker.
Yeah, kind of what chat's saying too is rogues do, especially for the mid and lower tier talents, a lot of the options are fairly similar, and they will waffle depending on your gear or your specific set bonus setup or whatever. And honestly, the difference between some of them is very minimal. I think, there have been various times when I was simming, say, Night Stalker versus Subterfuge, and the difference was like 2k DPS, so I could I could roll a die and just pick randomly before the raid. It really wouldn't make a difference.
But that is a good difference, especially as the numbers are so high, because then that allows you to play a style that you want to play, because a talent in that regard might change how you approach things. But if it's so close, then you actually can play the way you want to. That's good.
I think it's a positive thing overall. I think the talent on a number of these tiers are balanced fairly well. Couple of the other tiers not so much.
Well, sure.
Sub is very, very good about that. I think at the moment you do have several talent options that you can think about, and the same goes also for legendaries. You do have a lot of options there too, and you may not always want to pick the build that sims best, but also think about, hey, this boss requires maybe some more soaking, so I could use the talent ring to get some more energy for that, or really think about the
Pants
options
are really good for soaking too. You get so much healing.
Yeah, I mean, sub has always had a decent variety of legendary use, just because a lot of them are very close. I mean, the hands did kind of pull ahead when Fu figured out some optimizations there last year. But the bracers are really good in AoE situations where you can extend duration of your cooldown because you've got your combo point intake is so high. If you're like, say, Mistress, the bracers were really good. And yeah, the ring has become pretty decent as well recently. The insignia.
Right. So that means we're going over to you, Koji, for assassination. If you want to run me through, like, what's the cookie cutter or standard build that has sort of evolved now?
So pretty much the focus now is on, and has been for some time, on the poisons build. Assassinations basically have kind of two sub builds like built into their talent tree, where there's like one bleed focused build and with the exsanguinate and whatnot, and there's a poison focused build, but pretty much the poison build has been much higher, or at least notably higher, for quite some time now.
One scales as one of your stats, other one does not.
Right. So pretty much like Master Poisoner and Toxic Blade and Venom Rush are just a lock. Like there's just really not that much decision making on those tiers, and then you have two utility tiers. So really, it's only the 30 and 45 tiers that really have any discussion at all. Night Stalker versus Subterfuge are very close, and then they just waffle back and forth depending on APL stuff and stats. I mean, for me, I've swapped back and forth between Night Stalker and Subterfuge like multiple times over the last 3 weeks. One to abuse the Night Stalker bug, but that's some different issue. For the tier 45, Vigor tends to come out ahead in most builds, just because assassination and single target usually is running very low on energy. But that changes quite a bit in AoE situations, because it's very easy to start getting very high energy gains from Venom Rush and the set bonus, the tier 21 set bonus in say Mythic Plus or whatever. You just have tons of energy. So you generally wouldn't use Vigor too often in AoE situations, and you might swap over to something like Anticipation or Deeper Stratagem. But that will depend on gear too. You know, this is a sim yourself type of situation with those two tiers, because they're just both very close. Okay. I mean, the Master Poisoner and Toxic Blade just become completely no-brainers, because so much of your damage is poison damage. Yeah. And Toxic Blade buffs all of that additional damage. It buffs Kingsbane, and you know, our bleeds have scaled, and our bleeds have scaling crits now with the set bonus, so everything is just bleed focused. There's just no way around that at all. As such, you know, the bracers tend to be the go-to legendary along with the shoulders, just because they increase, you know, they add the execute effect to your poisons and bleeds. But there are some other legendaries that sim close, but I think in general, especially in raids, the bracers tend to be very powerful, just because they give you an execute mechanic. And a lot of these fights in Antorus have end of fight burn phases that are very dangerous, and being able to do more damage in those phases is beneficial.
Yeah, I remember talking about assassination very specifically, and I thought it was a neat build path that you have this back and forth on bleed style builds or very poison focused builds. And it's just unfortunate that the scaling towards the end of the expansion has obviously pushed itself really far towards the one that actually will continually scale with your gear, I suppose. And there's just way too much that you could stack to help poisons over bleeds.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of a, you know, it was an interesting idea, but probably not, you know, probably a bit of a failed experiment, just because, you know, having to pick on one versus the other, it's going to be very hard to build a class in a way where those are going to be equally balanced all the time. You know, it's going to go one way or it's going to go the other way.
And bleeds. And then all of a sudden, tuning changes. Because, I mean, like, it's just like when you design a class and half of its damage scales with your mastery and the other half doesn't, obviously it's a build that, like, actually benefits from mastery scaling. Right. Long enough time will work, but it's like, if you just make it so that, like, mastery now also affects your bleeds, and then BFA haste also affects your bleed speed tick rate, then all of a sudden you actually have like more potential for scaling.
Yeah.
And more fun spaghetti bugs that we're going to find for all of beta.
I wonder if they would just make assassination just poison focused in battle and remove the whole bleed component entirely, and move bleeds to like other rogue spec or just out of there. Feral. Yeah, I mean, because Feral obviously is about bleeds. So, because having both in the same just looks like it causes development problems, because if one is too strong, then it's all you play. If the other is too strong, that's all you play, and it ruins the other half of what their goal was. So
yeah, I mean, you have to use both anyway because they built in some interactions there to make it so, you know, like they've got Toxic Rush, right? So that will only give you the energy back if you have both poisons and bleeds on the target at the same time. So they've kind of built in some safety mechanisms to keep like one from falling out of the rotation.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, you're going to go one path or the other when you're choosing what to buff or to focus on.
Right. So that out of the way, and again, if you need more information on all the inner workings of all that stuff, then just A, Discord, B, Ravenholt, check that out, because there's a whole bunch of, you know, relics or NLC madness, traits, artifacts, all that combination. I'm not going to go over all that rigmarole. So go grab that in the guides in the resource section on Ravenholt. Just go dig in. We just wanted a little overview of those because it prefaces the rogue hierarchy overall. And the first bullet point I have on here is Outlaw actually that bad? And because we had high hopes for Outlaw at the beginning of the expansion, right? Pirates, ninjas, and assassins, I guess. But
Yikes.
So what's the good? Yeah, who wants to tackle the good, the bad, and the ugly of the rework now that we're a year plus into the expansion? I don't know who. I mean, roll the bone, staying, should it be removed? What? You have the good? What's the good?
Yeah. You actually use different abilities from what you used for the last 10 years.
Oh?
So I guess we're finally gone away from Sinister Strike and Eviscerate.
Sure.
I mean, Slice and Dice still there, but maybe eventually, kind of.
Okay.
I don't. You also have Grappling Hook. Grappling Hook is pretty fun when you get to use it.
Hell
and
yeah.
And you don't have Killing Spree killing you. I don't think there's anything else that's good that I have. Maybe somebody else.
Oh, real?
Well, okay. Outlaw is the only rogue spec that actually has cooldowns that scale well in AoE, so that's another fun aspect. It's like, Sub, you have Shadow Blades that on AoE, on actually big enough AoE, don't do anything, which is amazing. You just have cooldowns. It's like, woo, I have pretty animation.
Mm-hmm. It also scales from haste. It's the only rogue spec that scales from haste.
Yeah, you have Assassination. Is like, I'm going to mark one target in a pack of 20 mobs, and yeah, cool. And Outlaw actually, like, yeah, I'm going to pop Adrenaline Rush and increase my AoE damage. I'm going to have the Dread Blades, actually works in AoE, and does affect your rotation pretty significantly. So I guess it's like a plus.
Chat brings up we have a pistol now. We got a pistol. I think it looks the best personally. Just putting that out there.
Thunder Fury. You get a new Thunder Fury. That's
true. True.
I mean, I think from a flavor perspective and the abilities and stuff, Outlaw is cool. You know, I think most of the problems come down to the execution of the mechanics and you know, the fact that it's kind of equal parts lots of RNG and equal parts kind of boring. You know, like the rotation needs some special sauce in it to make it a little more interesting, because it's got a lot of things going on, like minor things. It's got all kinds of little buffs that, like, oh, your next Saber Slash is going to hit an additional time, or this next thing does 10% more damage. But they're all like kind of background and in you know, automatic. And nothing is really worth playing around. It doesn't change your rotation. Like, there's a couple procs that change your rotation, but very few. And you just kind of do your thing. And if you get good luck and good procs, you're happy and you're on the top of the damage meters. And if you don't, you're somewhere towards the bottom. So it's unfortunate. It feels kind of bad.
Yeah, that's the hierarchy of RNG that is been very prevalent for, and Roll the Bone started off really bad earlier on in Legion. It's obviously gotten much better, and as we brought back up going to the overview, that obviously there's a back and forth on Roll the Bones versus Slice and Dice now, because they've buffed it probably an innumerable amount of times over the course of the expansion to try to get it to be comparable as an alternative play style. But I think with Outlaw, Survival, definitely Demon Hunter itself, and Demonology Warlock again, those are probably under the scalpel for Battle for Azeroth, definitely getting some TLC, because they all have stuff, but at the same time it's just like it's almost there.
You know what else is common between all of those three specs outside of Demon Hunters? Lowest weapon rates, pretty sure.
Oh,
Like,
lowest
if
representation.
you look at heroic rates, I'm pretty sure like Outlaw, Survival, and Demo are the least played specs in like heroic and Taurus. I think it was.
Yeah, I can go look. That's actually curious to look at that right now. Statistics.
It might have been Mythic, it might have been heroic, I'm not as sure, but let's...
I mean, the problem with Roll to Bones is not just RNG, it's also not very approachable, because it's very hard at, you know, say you're a casual player and you're picking up that spec for the first time, you don't know what those buffs do, if the good buffs or bad buffs. Do I have to set up weak auras to track if I have 2 good ones versus 3 good ones versus 1 bad? Like, you know, it's just inherently very confusing as a mechanic. So it doesn't really surprise me that it's not super popular.
Also, re-rolling the buffs, I feel like that's like a kind of problematic mechanic where it's like, if like, hey, you got buffs, but they're not good enough. So instead of like going and doing like run through or everything else, you're just gonna keep on rolling again. So that's from design perspective. I don't know if it's like you popped a cooldown, but instead of a cooldown, you were just cycling through things, and then like, hey, you got 6 buffs. There's like 5 seconds left.
I mean, some people in the community have had some good ideas on how you could revamp Roll the Bones and make it into like a short cooldown and some cycled thing or something to make it more, you know, less RNG and more approachable. But you know, we'll see what they do for
Outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna call it Inside Bones.
Oh gosh, I wanted to look at this because you brought that up, and I had to type this up manually. So I did Mythic, all bosses, current raid, current patch, etc. 50th percentile, and you're not wrong. Like the amount of aggregate data we have here is, like you said, survival, demonology, and outlaw rogue are the lowest parsed in Mythic. And if you want to toggle this over to the 50% heroic as well and scroll down, it is the same actually. There's obviously there's still
arcana. So.
Right, but there's still lots. Like, I mean, there's 35,000 heroic in this parsed area for outlaw, but I mean, 35,000 outlaw versus 200,000 marksmanship hunters or 346,000 havoc demon hunters. Right, like the math is here. It is definitely the lower end for sure. Even
like if you look at heroic Argus, for example, which is, I think, I don't know. So like, I'm seeing that, let's say there's 34,500 affliction parses and 1,500 demo. So it's like 20 times more represented.
Right.
Affliction versus demo. And then there's also Destro, which is again like not that high, but still 4 times the representation of demo. Outlaw is like 2.8, assassination is 14, and then there's still sub. Survival is a big 728 survival parses versus 23,000 BM hunters and like another 17 marksmen.
I oh no, go ahead. I just like the numbers here because I'm surprised. I toggled to Mythic 99th percentile and there are still 685 survival parses. So you do you, I feel like it shows survival hunters.
Parses. No, I think 99th percentile it shows you the damage, but parse numbers won't change. But it's like that's the issue that I feel like one thing you kind of need to look at what exactly like happened this expansion that you like the major reworks happened to Outlaw, Demo, Survival, and like a few other classes, but I don't think like anything as major as those 3, and all of them failed. So I feel like Blizzard kind of should, because like we had Outlaws in the past. I mean, reworks of like classes in the past. And they've been like hit and miss, but generally they've been kind of still like well received. And here, even like this patch, you have Survival that's apparently actually doing like fairly competitive damage, kind of supposedly for like all 5 survival hunters who play it, and really good at it because there's only 5 of them. But it's like if you have like just 3 new classes reworks and all of them fail, you kind of need to look and see what exactly is the issue, because it's probably somewhat shared. It's not just going to be like, hey, completely different like things happening everywhere.
I would also say we missed one good aspect of Outlaw, which is it does actually have fairly strong AoE capabilities and consistent AoE capabilities. The problem is there's really not any fight in particular that leverages that really significantly right now.
Well, especially now that you have Assassination was 4 pieces, it's also
consistent. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, for example, like I considered when we were having issues with ads on Vera Masters, I considered going Outlaw because they can actually do damage to the ads, whereas Sub and Assassination just can't do anything to the ads. But it's a very minor thing. I think Outlaw could be good. I think the variance is just, it makes it really hard in a progression rating environment to have the high variance in there, and that's not even, the Sims don't even always consider the fact that in a real raid, due to the mechanics of the Pantheon trinket, if you're relying on the Pantheon trinket for a big chunk of your damage, like Outlaw does, and you look at logs afterwards and you're like, I got 1 proc, and somebody else, some other agility DPS like Babs stole all 28 procs. You get a little salty about that. So
you bring up AoE, and that sort of coattails into the last major topic I had here about Mythic Plus, because then I asked, so which spec is the best for rogues in Mythic Plus? And we've seen rogue representation, of course, over the MDI, and we have the next season of it soon, next iteration of it soon after the changes. But is there a different hierarchy in that regard? Because Mythic Plus is a huge part of the game now. It is not going away, and it's going to be evolved and iterated upon in Battle for Azeroth. So is that just sort of where Outlaw is? And
no.
See,
I feel
that's
right now it'd still be Sub and Assassination. Because again, it's like you have those niches that Sub has the whole shoulder cape vanish DFA thing, where you just go and explode for more than 100 million damage, on a small pulls in 2 GCDs. Assassination still has you pull 20 mobs that take say 30 seconds to die, and you have enough time to just get poison bomb procs. And Outlaw's just I'm gonna hit it, but it's not gonna burst as hard as Sub. It might sustain, but things usually don't live long enough. Yeah, and I don't even think it's gonna sustain as hard as Assassination.
Yeah, they do a decent sustain, and you can run Bark for Death, and that's quite good. But it's awkward. Roll the Bones causes all kinds of problems in dungeons too. Are you gonna waste half your Roll the Bones duration on a good roll, just running between packs, or sit there re-rolling when you're trying to burst stuff down? It just doesn't. It's not very practical. Whereas Sub, you do Sub, you're gonna come out of stealth, Shadow Strike, DFA combo, do a ton of damage to everything in the pack.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen every single pull with 0 variance whatsoever.
I think Burst AoE really dominates the current, let's call it M+ meta. So Sub really has an edge there.
Yeah.
And also good legendaries to support that burst.
I mean, we talked about it a bit the other day, but I think Assassination with the set bonus is not terrible for Mythic Plus. I don't think it's as good as Sub for high tiers, but I don't push super high keys very often anymore.
I would actually say it's the opposite. I would say Assassination's really good on high keys when you get to 24s, 25s, because you're not gonna burst things down there, and you just get to spread dots. You have your poison sticking and everything. You get poison bomb procs. While that's another thing that really high tiers right now, so people are pushing keys. People are doing 25s, 26, 27s. That's pushing. MDIs, even last MDI, I think people were doing 24 keys. MDIs were on 17. So MDI still has a different meter from what current top end is. So you're going to be doing lower keys because nobody wants to outside of fun teams in Arcway and some Chinese teams and Nell Slayer. You're generally not going to want to sit and watch team on a tournament just hey, we got kind of stuck by this boss, so we're going to wait 40 minutes to try and kill it. You want to do it to bring down the difficulty so you don't get an hour plus 60 deaths Arcway runs.
Yeah, I mean, the affixes definitely play into it too in terms of the two. There's some strengths and weaknesses. So many times when I've played Sub and Mythic Plus and you're doing bolstering or whatever, and you're try not to kill everything evenly, and you do Death from Above and hit a eviscerate crit on your target for 17 million damage. That makes it a little awkward.
Yeah, if you're not playing very, very high keys and you burst down a group, and with bursting affix, you just talk to your healer. Hey, can you do this? Because there are stacks incoming.
But I've been lazily running Assassination and Mythic Plus most weeks now, and I think it performs fairly well. Like I don't think most people, if you're playing Assassination well, are gonna have problem doing Mythic Plus, really.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the tags I hear is Assassination just too consistent in comparison, and then where does Subtlety fall? So that both of those still have way more in the court, and that always comes up with Rogue, Hunter, Mage, and Warlock, is that two of your specs normally compete for the top spot, and then you have one that's just sort of there. The old hierarchy used to be that you had like one that was way more focused on PvP, one that worked really good in endgame high-end raids, and then your third was just like you could play it, it was fine, sort of middle ground. But it's definitely a lot more prevalent in Legion, where you have two front runners and one behind. And that's for all 4 of the pure DPS specs right now. And that's just mathematically true, which it just happens. It just kind of always sort of goes that way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that Assassination is kind of average consistency. Poison Bomb kind of throws a monkey wrench in the works. Like if it weren't for Poison Bomb, Assassination would be very consistent. But
it should just be a spell or a talent.
You know, like Poison Bomb can swing the damage even on pure single target by a massive amount. 10%, you know, like you're talking about, I've had farces where I was doing Varimathras a couple weeks ago, and Poison Bomb did 2.8% of my damage instead of the average, which is 7. And you top parse on the fight has 23% of their damage from Poison Bomb. So there's that. I mean, Sub is very consistent. Sub is a very, very consistent spec, and if you execute the rotation correctly, there isn't really a ton of RNG other than our new set bonus, which everyone hates.
Well, I mean, okay. Those are going away in Battle for Azeroth, though, so we don't have to worry about that anymore.
It was a little more consistent in T20. You could basically do the same thing every pull in T20, like when I was on Kill Jaden or whatever. I could just do the whole rotation on autopilot.
Right.
Do the same damage, same rotation every pull.
Right. Which that's what chat brings up. Sub isn't consistent with the new tier 21 4-piece, getting 4 eviscerates in one Shadow Dance window. Craigasm. But that
it's a fairly rare occurrence, so the average variance of Sub is still the lowest of any of the 3 specs.
Okay.
Compared to the others that have, some more wildly swinging abilities that you can't control.
Right. But sometimes it's okay to have a set bonus, at least to a degree, that does change out the playstyle. Otherwise, that's the one thing we're worried about, at least that some people have echoed for battle, is that with no set bonuses, is Azerite gear going to have enough of an impact to make us change? Or are we going to be hitting the same buttons in the same order for 2 years? Which, that may happen. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is that if you're not a slave to so much RNG, do you have more fun playing your class? Does this consistency scale just go up for everyone? I don't know.
Ask WoW developers, RNG equals fun.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
I mean, the set bonus thing is definitely like a bittersweet thing for me, because I've been playing since vanilla, and sets have always been such a big thing, and they are that avenue for changing your rotation like mid expansion, because Blizzard has a tendency to avoid major changes between expansions mechanically, and it lets them kind of inject some stuff that wouldn't otherwise happen. So I think we'll just have to see what the Azerite stuff brings. It could be, talent changing level stuff, or it could just be passives that don't really affect much at all.
Yeah. So we're at sort of the end here, that if chat has any questions, you can toss them up so the guests can sort of rebuttal on them or answer them, depending on how it works out. We have a couple of minutes for those. Of course, if you do have questions for episodes as they come up, or of course questions for me to test when Battle for Azeroth coverage can begin and shows for it can happen, then link down below on the channel guide for the Discord server that you can join for FinalBossTV. Don't have to be a sub or anything. Subs get like full control. They can go everywhere, but the general chat I use sort of for the Q&A. And if you actually have legit questions you want to get in touch with me with, that is a unlock on Patreon that you can just send me a question directly, and I will put it in the show notes. But is Dog?
Yes.
I was wondering what
Is
that
the-
noise was behind the scenes.
Yeah, I was asked by like a ton of people for Is Dog to join us on stream.
Well, dog is here now. I don't know. Is it dog or is it still a pupper? Where do you rate?
It's honestly, I would say it's a cat.
Oh,
Because we actually had a really fun moment today when I went to like a new dog playpen in our area, which is like about like up to my neck, and some dog like half her size just started running at her, and for some reason she got scared because normally she bullies dogs like 4 times her size, which is hilarious to see. She's a bit toxic bully, but some dog like half her size started running at her. She got scared. She just started jump and climbing the cage. Like I had to sprint and just catch her as her like legs are already over it. I'm just like, okay, we're never coming back here again. But she climbs like a squirrel or a cat more so than a dog. But it's a pupper. Reporting a dog for fly hacks, by the way.
yeah.
Must be a PvPer. Toxic and bully. PvPer confirmed, actually.
Oh, yeah. Northern asks about which one of you will regret losing artifacts if none of its talents are embedded into talent trees. I guess to expound, which spec would hurt the most from not retaining any of those?
Outlaw, probably.
Cat-like reflexes, sub.
Oh, come on!
They better make that passive, man. I can't live without.
I will
no
die
fall
as
damage.
soon as we'll take falling damage again.
Just roll Pandaren. There you go. Cat-like reflexes baseline.
I mean, there are quite a lot of mechanics built into all the rogue specs.
Right.
That they're gonna have to roll stuff baseline. I think it's gonna be very difficult to get away with nothing translating over.
But that being said, I do feel like that artifact has the biggest impact on Outlaw, because like a sub, you gain Orpheans, you gain like finality, which is nice, but doesn't really change much. We gain something else probably. We gain like Shadow Nova and like the ghosty spooky ads that doesn't really add anything besides like small AoE and like a small single target.
Yeah.
As assassination, you get Kingsbane, which is I guess nice, but still like not as significant as you would want, and it's still only single target, which is not fun.
Poison bomb.
Poison bomb is coming already back as a talent on BlizzCon.
That's already confirmed. So we know they're bringing that over.
Yeah. So that's like whatever. And while like as Outlaw, you're missing Dreadblades, you're missing Greed procs, which are pretty big.
Yeah.
You're missing, probably missing something else. It's a bit, but I feel like Outlaw overall would lose so much, especially because if we look at say legendary impact, I've already I'm pretty sure it's also confirmed, like at least on BlizzCon, that Mantle is coming back. So outside of that, for like assassination, you might like lose legendary cloak for AoE.
Lose poison knives.
Yeah, you
lose a whole rotation.
As assassination, I guess once again we don't have execute because Rope Dispatch. Maybe you come back and BFA for us, please. So we hit something other than mutilate. But as Outlaw, you're losing bracers, which is I would say probably one of the most rotation impacting legendaries for all of rogues.
Yeah, I think bracers for assassination, like Aethys brings up in chat, would be a good candidate for bringing baseline. I mean, obviously they've confirmed the shoulders or some version of the shoulders is making it into a talent, which makes sense. The shoulders have dominated basically every spec, every build.
That'd be interesting to see how they iterate upon that, because we don't know how legendaries are going to be in battle, if they're going to be all like utility fun, hopefully, because they can't compete with the Neck or the Azerite gear. So, but which legendary passives or abilities become talents or get rolled into the class that are so integral that they cannot remove them without gutting? Because they're doing a downsizing in Battle for Azeroth for sure. Not just the item squish itself, but you take off your artifact weapon right now in Legion, and a lot of specs just don't work. So
arms, by the way.
Yeah. In a big way, enhancement doesn't work. You just kind of sit there and hit 3 buttons and just wait. So
I mean,
yeah.
Is that very different?
This guy though. Phaedron wants to know currently which spec and or build is best for new rogue players like intro to something like a mid-tier player, like picking up Rogue?
Assassination.
I guess that kind of depends on how you want to play and how easy you want the rotation to be, and also on the level you want to play on. Of course, if you're not rating like high-level Mythic tier, and I think you can pretty much play what you want. Just try out every spec, every single spec plays differently, and you should really try which one you like best, and probably play that, because you'll always be best at what you prefer to play.
Yeah, I mean, Assassination is the lowest APM spec, so if you're not like a super button smashy Twitch type of person, I think it's probably a good place to start. But like any bleed dot class, you know, you have to kind of have some stuff set up to dot track and do that type of thing. So that's not everybody's thing. Subs rotation is a little tricky, some of the aspects, but I don't think it's actually too bad to learn if you're kind of quick on your keyboard and you don't mind doing kind of some more complex little series of button presses. And otherwise, it's not too bad to learn. Sub is not too bad to pick up at all, to be honest, especially for like Mythic Plus and stuff.
I would say the two easiest specs, like in general, to learn would be either Assassination, because like it has some like things to min max, but overall it's keep your poisons up and hidden venom. If you're looking at like very basic level. Other basic option is to just go and play Slice and Dice Outlaw. I would say that's I feel like it's another pretty not too overwhelming spec, especially before you get like legendaries, before you get bracers, before you get anything else. You have kind of freedom to just like, I'm gonna hit Cyber Slash and Saber Slash and Saber Slash, and then I'm gonna hit Run Through until I need to refresh my Rolls of Bones again. But I would not recommend Outlaw because I don't think it's like very good. And I feel like one of the issues that a lot of new players face is once they get into the game and toxicity thing that like, if you see an outlaw, like if you see a survival hunter in your group, like if they do good, you're not going to say anything. But like if people don't, especially new players, they're not going to play like 100% of their class performance. They're probably going to get like, hey, you suck. You just go play marksman, go play BM while you're playing survival and all of that. So for new players, like just play something that's like more generally acceptable, and then you can go and play something that you find fun, I would say.
Right. Let's see. I have like one more because we're at time for sure. Is sapping another CC useful in Mythic Plus? And if smaller but heavier trash pulls start appearing, would CC like Parlay become more wanted in group? Oh gosh, Parlay. I thought that would be so cool to use properly, but it just never got used like at all. I think it's like one cheese mechanic with Parlay, but
I use something in Vishara on Murlocs.
Yeah, you take the buff Murloc to buff your group, I believe.
I mean, Sap and Blind are always going to be situationally useful. So, you know, that's been the case for a very, very long time.
You know what would be really situationally useful if they didn't take away Bind Elemental from Shamans? Why though? Anyway.
Too many buttons.
Yep. I'm not gonna get on that rage train that the Shaman class has lost 19 utility spells in 2 expansions. No big deal. It's fine. Just brush under the rug. It's okay. No big deal. And then how do you feel about the current resource generation rate compared to combo point energy generation rate in earlier expansions, and the effect that it has on timing your ability, rather than just hitting the right ability quickly enough to not cap resources? I mean, all 3 rogue specs play a little differently in this regard, right? So I don't know who wants...
I feel like the only one in danger of capping resources is Outlaw. Like,
Outlaw.
Sub bonus on single target, you have like 60%... I mean, Assassination on single target has like 60% downtime of just, I'm going to wait for energy. And then you get to AoE and you're actually GCD capped because, hey, scaling, hey, multiple...
Yeah, it's really...
very good design.
Assassination is very strange like that because, yeah, we were talking about the other night. It's like Assassination is actually one of the lowest APM on single target of any spec in the game. And then as soon as you get to AoE and get your bleeds up on a couple targets, you start getting tons of energy, and then you're like GCD capped, and even, you know, wasting 1 GCD on like reapplying a rupture on a target that's out of range or something like that. It's like a huge DPS loss. So it's a little interesting in that regard. I think Outlaw has a huge pacing problem with its energy regen because you really cap, even if you're button smashing, you can cap energy.
Even
and
just combo points.
it just feels bad. Sub somewhere in the middle. I think overall assassination and sub energy regen feels a little low most of the time if you're outside of like Symbols of Death combo for sub.
And another issue with those two class specs specifically is so much of the energy regen that you get isn't attached to your like haste. So it's not like, hey, I got 50% haste versus 0. I'm gonna get 50% more energy. It's like, hey, I have like all of this energy, so it's just it doesn't scale. So like for assassination, I would, that's another issue with our current haste values, that getting haste doesn't actually speed out your gameplay as much as you want, because so little of the energy regen is coming from like the passive. So like, hey, my dots ticked, which don't get scaled by haste, and that gives me energy. Or hey, I have symbols, or hey, I have something else, and it's something that can be fixed in BFA, hopefully.
Yeah,
so we can go back to haste will fix it, quotes from Blizzard.
Yeah, my hope for BFA is that they take a look at like short cooldowns that generate energy or things that generate energy and make sure those are all scaling from haste correctly, because when it doesn't, it just creates really bad interactions where your baseline regen is just such a small percentage of your total regen.
Fair enough. All right, this is closing time. So soapbox, shout outs and things you guys had. And no, I reiterated this in Discord, but you don't have to like shout out certain people or how many. I'm just kidding. But Mystler, I'm going to go back to you, sir. I mean, first and foremost, I will again plug the resources on my tail end. But do you have anything you wanted to soapbox about or leave the Rogue community with, or anyone else that you wanted to give an internet high five to? This is your time to shine.
Well, as a little follow-up to the last question about what spec you play if the new player,
oh, yeah.
I think I should mention Aethys Rotation, which is an add-on that will always show you what the simulation craft robot would do in your position at the moment, so it can really help you pick up the rotation of the spec that you want to play. So you may want to check that out. That is a follow-up that I want to give. Other than that, a shout out to all the people that do help with contributions in the Rogue community. Of course, the people that got me into it, Fire Demise and Aethys. A personal shout out to Fu, who does a lot of work on the Subtlety APL and who's helping very much there, and who's also become somewhat of a friend as a fellow German-speaking guy. And then shout out to my guild. There are probably a few of them watching right now. I don't know. So yeah, you guys are the best.
Awesome. Koji, how about you?
I mean, he stole most of mine, so that's fine. I have to say thanks to Aethys and Fiery as well, because they got me into this stuff and have been very welcoming to me as a relatively new member of the Rogue community. So I give a lot of credit to them for making me feel welcome. Good shout out to our longtime Rogue Zot in our guild, who I pestered incessantly to look over my logs when I was swapping over to Rogue, and kind of helped me figure things out as we were raiding together in Tomb. And then to my guild for having some patience with me re-rolling mid-tier.
Sounds good to me. Greyhound, lead us out of here.
Based on a podcast, they stole like half of my shutouts, but
sure, of course.
Again, like Fiery and Aethys for everything. Also Pariah, because I still remember like hanging out in the Rogue IRC chats back in days and arguing that like this is not working in Simcraft. We can do more damage, camera focus, and having interesting conversations too. Like a lot of other like Rogue regulars. Shoutouts to my guild, most of whom are banned from this channel for some various reasons.
Yep.
Shoutouts to Tank Chat, half of which are also banned from this channel for various reasons. I don't know, shoutouts to the dogs everywhere. Doggies.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I mean, well, they're going to be automatically banned if they came in here and just spammed emotes or characters beyond a certain limit. So it's not our doing. It's just they did it to themselves. Because I don't want my chat full of madness. It's not an esports chat, all right? Because we want to be able to read what people are saying. Sort of like a live... Yep. But that's going to do it. What's up?
I will also shout out really quickly to the Feral and Havoc communities, because,
No, you already covered Kip. You don't have to worry. We're getting demoted now.
I've done lots
Yeah.
of stuff with those guys, and they're all good classes, good specs, and it's always good to have them on board.
Awesome. Good stuff. I'm going to go over here and hit this button then. So please, of course, if you need any more rogue information, as any of these shows will be wrapping up over the pure DPS specs and possibly tanks and healers, there are resources that you can go check. So go check out ravenholt.net for all the rogue stuff, as well as the GitHub posted in their Discord for all of the reporting and APL and Simcraft stuff. Check out herodamage.com as that evolves over time for all of your damage parses, combinations, and things in a much more easily digestible format, just for a bit of a overview. And then, of course, get raid bots and go pledge to raid bots on Patreon to get your sim updates and to keep this awesome resource and cloud going, because I'm sure it's not cheap the way that there is so much traffic on this on patch days. It's hilarious. But go check out those resources. And if you missed any part of this show, of course, it'll be on YouTube. All of these will be on YouTube or iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music as audio-only versions, whichever way you want to digest the show. Additional shows on Patreon, and I have to plug this again because they're way too good. If you want to support the show and eat something at the same time, go check out Daily Harvest down below for smoothies, overnight oats, parfaits, sundaes, the soups. This soup, chat, I'm serious. I'm not even kidding. Way too good. Next week should be Mages, I believe. That is going to happen. But around the table again for the guests today, there was Greyhound plus Doggo. You can go follow him on Twitter at BitHound, or of course, bother him in the multiple different Discords he is in. So thank you for
I have a question about the food website.
Yes.
Does it offer any Tide Pod specials?
Oh my god. Really though?
They're delicious and pretty.
No, stop. That's this guy. Go follow him if you want to, or whatever. And there's Koji. You can go follow him over on Discord. You go poke him in there, ask him questions and whatnot, and join in the conversation in the different communities that he's a part of. Thank you for being on the show today, sir. It was a pleasure.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And Mystler on Twitter, or of course you can find him in the Discords at the same name, making all of the resources and things. And keep doing the math that you do, because I don't know how you guys do this stuff. So I would love to keep plugging it in the future. So thank you very much for your time today, sir.
Thanks for having me.
But that's it. Again, mages hopefully next week, and then hunters, and then warlocks, something like that. Or warlocks, and then hunters, and then, I don't know. Depends on who's available. Getting these shows together right now, depending on who the guests are, and if they're EU or not, if they're rating or not, or something, and Argus, and we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated on Twitter. Social links, of course, for the show are down below. Subscribe on YouTube. Apparently I'm supposed to say that like every half an hour. But if you're on YouTube, hit the red button so you don't miss any episodes that are being archived on that platform. But until next, everybody, hopefully your weapons are all done in 75s and you're playing other games right now. Like Slay the Spire. It's a fantastic little gem. But I'll see you all here next week. And until then... wait! Wave by at the nice people. Wave by at the nerds. Wave at them. Yes, we did it. Okay, it took a while, but we got there. All right, chat room, thank you for tuning in to episode number 1.